This is a bike that I rescued from a skip, and this is the brightest and longest glowing glow-in-the-dark powder in the world. And you can probably see where this is going. We're going to make a glow-in-the-dark bike. Now I think this bike is from the 90s, and back in its day it was quite a nice bike, but it's not looking so good now, so it needs a bit of love. The tyres are obviously shot, someone's cut off the rear derailleur at some point, so it's going to need a fair bit of work. That's long. What is that? What? No, I don't have the right tool. Now paint stripper in the UK kind of sucks, but luckily for me with this bike being quite old, it seems to have been spray painted rather than powder coated in the factory, so stripping the paint off was not that hard. So about a day of paint stripping later, this is my bare metal frame and I'm just putting the primer on. And at the next step, when we add the glow, I will explain why I'm brushing it on rather than spraying it. So that is 3 coats of primer on my frame. And it's time to add the glow. So now I need to decide what powder we're going to use, because we have a blue and a green which are both insanely bright, and most of the previous projects we've done have been using the green powder, so we thought the blue deserves a bit of love. So we're going for blue for this bike. But we actually have 3 different blues to choose from. The blue dust is incredibly bright and has a very small particle size of about 1/100th of a millimeter. So this is really good for mixing with paint. However, if you go up a particle size, you can get more brightness. So this is our powder, which has a particle size of just under 1/10th of a millimeter. So it's nearly 10 times the particle size of the dust. That means it glows brighter and longer than the dust, but it does leave quite a sandy texture if you mix it into paint. The brightest powder is the chunks, but these particles are up to about 2 millimeters, so it's kind of impossible to mix this with paint. It's more designed for stuff like epoxy casting. So for this project, I'm going to use the powder, which is going to be a good sweet spot between brightness and ease of use when mixing into paint. So now I need to mix up our paint, and I've got some brush-on polyurethane coach enamel, which should go on clear, but it's got this faint kind of purple tinge to it. And initially I'm mixing 2 parts paint to 1 part powder, but it still seemed very fluid. I thought I could fit a bit more in, so I upped it to about a 1-to-1 mix. Ooh. Okay, let's see how this goes on. It's painting. It's a disgusting colour. Look at that. So after my first coat, it's dried. There's quite a lot of drips. You can see by how this is separated completely just how heavy these particles are. That means when you paint it on, as you can see, these drips do form quite easily. So I'm just going to have to keep going, add more and more coats, and then any visible drips that are still there at the end, I can just sand those down. So that is 1 day of painting done. I've got 2 or 3-ish coats, and let's see how it glows. Oh my god. It's not exactly brightly lit in here, but it's not like pitch black, so that is insane. You can probably hear it's got this kind of sandy texture, and that's why I didn't bother spray painting it, because I don't really need that increase in quality that you get from spray paint. Although having brushed this on, spray paint probably would have helped to dissipate the particles better inside the paint. But this is working well enough. I love it even more in the dark, but it's only going to get brighter. So end of day 2, I found this stuff is very difficult to work with. I would not recommend using the powder when you're trying to paint something smooth like metal, but I've done maybe 5 or 6 coats and managed to get a pretty even coverage of glow over the whole thing. It really looks and feels like it's made of like salt or coral. I've also only used about 100 grams. So this 600 gram jar does go quite a long way, and that's including all of the wastage in the paint that I didn't end up using. But yeah, I'm going to give it a couple of days to cure, and now it's time to start putting this bike back together. So I want to try to bring it a bit more up to date. This bike is about 30 years old, and there's a lot of corrosion on the aluminium forks, so I'm polishing that off. Then reusing as many of the original parts as I can, but just making sure I give them a thorough clean before putting them back on the bike. Now the bike originally came with these rather rim brakes, but for some reason my forks have a disc brake mount, so it seemed like the perfect excuse to replace the wheels from those disgusting blue ones to this disc brake wheel. And then I've also got these quite nice tan wall tyres. Looking good! And here it is. I stopped filming doing all the gear cables and brake cables and stuff. Had to take the shifters to pieces because there was a sticky mechanism thing, so it took like an entire day to get the gears set up and stuff. But it works now, and I think it's quite a nice looking bike, to be honest. But most importantly, it glows in the dark. And it doesn't just glow in the dark, it glows in a fully lit room as well. And then in a slightly less bright area, it's starting to look pretty insane. And remember, I haven't charged this with a torch or anything. This is just from it sitting in front of the window a few minutes ago. And now the sun is nearly set. I haven't charged this at all. It's just been sitting here for a few hours. And it's got this kind of ghostly blue tinge to it. But let's charge it up with the UV torch. Oh. That's awesome. It's just crazy. It feels like I shouldn't be allowed to touch it. I love it so much. Alright, let's go outside. Realise I don't have the best low light camera equipment, so here it is with less moving around. Thanks for watching, guys. That was the glow bike. Let us know what you want us to make glow next.